Hello, and welcome to Advanced Manufacturing Now, the podcast for manufacturing professionals. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to get new episodes delivered to your inbox each week. I'm your host, Rachel Thomas, editor at SME Media, and I'm here today with my colleague, Michael McConnell, senior editor of SME Media. And today we're going to be discussing a wonderful piece he wrote that's coming out in our February edition of Manufacturing, Engineering, and Technology magazine, discussing veterans in the workforce. So, Mike, if you'd like to, introduce yourself and talk a bit about the issue.
Sure. Thanks, Rachel. How are you, by the way?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
Yes. So for this article, I was tasked with the workforce development is a huge topic. We're always covering from different angles, and for this one, I looked into America's military veterans and if they could perhaps be a resource for all these manufacturers that don't have the skilled employees they need. And what I've discovered was that the military veterans make a pretty good resource, and while a lot of companies aren't aware of that, there are some companies that are in the know and really do seek out and recruit veterans because they like what they offer. They like their work ethic. They like their know-how, and it fits actually very well into the manufacturing space. So it was a really interesting piece.
Yeah, absolutely. While I was reading through it during our editing process and everything, I noticed you got to talk with a lot of different people, veterans, talent acquisition specialists, things like that. So how did you kind of approach looking for the people that you were going to interview?
Well, I did some research, preliminary research, and was looking at how big the problem is and how our veterans have any experts commented on the fact that veterans are a good resource and where you can find them. And absolutely, there was articles and studies that said veterans are a really good, largely untapped resource. So I reached out to some veteran organizations, some manufacturers, and that I had heard or read that had success hiring veterans, and really sought them out and thought I would talk to them about why they like them, how they find them, what they look for in them, in the candidates, and it was really really interesting. I remember I talked to one person that I led off the article with who came out of a 20-year career and didn't know what he was going to do. He had done in the army for all those decades, and transition to civilian life was a tough thing for him. And he was lucky that there was a number of veteran organizations that helped veterans transition to civilian life, and they helped put him in contact with some manufacturers that really wanted this veteran skill sets. Michael Figueroa is the gentleman I'm talking about. They liked the fact that he knew about defense equipment. He knew about this. This was a military contractor, and they really liked that he knew a lot of their stuff when he walked in the door. So it's very interesting to see where veterans fit in and who's using them and who's not using them, or who doesn't know they're even out there. It's really very interesting.
Yeah, speaking of Michael and how you kind of started the article with him, can you talk to me a bit more about, it might have been mentioned during his part of the story where, those initial fears for, U.S. service members and veterans that they have about, leaving the military and joining the workforce. So can you provide like any insights on that?
Sure. I have a little a personal story about that, not involving me. I did not serve, but my father decades ago was in the Air Force. He went into the Air Force after high school because he didn't know what he wanted to do, and he thought, I'd like to fly some planes. So he went into the Air Force. Did not fly any planes, mostly fixed radios, but they determined he was not pilot material. But that's okay. But when he came out after his 4 years, he actually would have probably stayed longer, but he was started to date with my mom at that point, and she did not like the idea of being a military spouse and traveling all over the world and living everywhere. But so he transitioned out. He didn't know what he was going to do either. He really didn't know, and there were not those kind of resources like there are today for him. But you were starting to ask me again about some of the background, or was it about Michael Figueroa? I apologize.
No, it's all good. Yeah, we had when we were talking about Michael Figueroa, it reminded me of kind of how you brought up in the beginning of your article, where there are those fears that U.S. service members and veterans they have about leaving the military and joining the workforce. I was wondering if you had any like additional insights.
Yeah, it's quite common. They don't know who's going to be interested in them, and many of them don't know how to explain what they do to a regular company recruiter. The military, like every industry, has its own language, its own jargon, and if you put that on a resume and send it into a listing on Indeed.com or ZipRecruiter or something, a lot of those recruiters and HR people won't know what you're talking about, and so that is a legitimate fear, and that's why that there is programs now that help military veterans explain what they do so civilians understand, and help civilians understand what these military terms mean, because a lot of them are really the skills are very transferable in a lot of cases. It's just you got to make sure you're talking the same language. But if you are, veterans have a good chance at getting some really good jobs, and employers have a chance of getting some really good employees.
Yeah, I actually really liked in the story how you gave some examples of, like a military commander could make for a dynamic senior manager. I feel like it really puts into perspective like, oh yeah, those soft skills, those, hard skills, those are transferable and they could really, be used in everyday jobs.
Yeah, it's just a case of knowing how to explain that. And I can't I can't blame the veterans or HR people for not knowing, because it's just not, if you've never served, you don't know that world. There was a lot of acronyms I learned doing this story, and a lot of terms I did not know. Um, and but you read about what they are and what they mean, and that's, you can just see it's a direct line to a future career, to a transferable skill, but you just have to know what you're talking about. And you have to know, and for veterans have to know how to explain what they do and how that really relates to what the skills the employers are looking for when they apply for jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I also like the area you discussed in the story where it helps when, not that this is a non negotiable or something that it has to be, but when you have these companies or these businesses that are owned by veterans. Like I think Jurgens was an example of that. So, how else would you say that's really beneficial for veterans, maybe to kind of see themselves like, oh, this is a person who was also in the military, who was also in the Navy, and they've come out and they're now owning businesses. So, what else would you have to say about that?
Yeah, if you're fortunate enough to apply for a company that is known for being friendly to veterans and hiring veterans, that can really help. In the case of Jack Schron from Jurgens, if I recall, his whole all their executive team, or the owners, I forget, are veterans. So they know the lingo. They know what veterans offer. Of course, it helps that they're a military supplier themselves, so it makes a lot of sense. But I mean, they really do go out of their way to be veteran friendly and to seek those veterans out, and to help them realize what a great opportunity that their company offers, because they always say, hey, we understand you. We served ourselves decades ago, so we know we were where you were, and we know what we think you could offer a lot here, and that's got to make veterans feel good, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, saying for the businesses or companies that don't have owners who are veterans, that doesn't mean, of course, that they can't or shouldn't, hire veterans. But what would you say these companies who may not have, you know, veterans in the leadership or the ownership, how can they make their companies more veteran friendly, comforting, or, enticing for veterans?
Well, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I learned there's a lot of associations, nonprofits, and what have you, that are they're designed to help veterans transition to civilian life, and some of them even have programs on the other side, helping match veterans to civilian careers. So they introduce veterans to these companies that may not understand that. That's your best bet. If you are a manufacturer, if you're a company, and you don't have a program in place to educate about veterans, or to be veteran friendly, work with them. They're happy. A lot of these associations, homes for workplaces for our heroes, various organizations like that, they have programs in place to educate employers and say, hey, well, these veterans do exactly what you're looking for. I remember some of the ones I mentioned in the article, workshops for warriors, Hire Heroes USA, the Society for Human Resources Management. You can tell some of these are from the employer side, others are from the applicant or veteran side, but they work well together, trying to put people together and teach veterans, again, how to talk about what they do, and point out to human resources people or recruiters how to talk to these veterans, how to figure out how they fit into your company.
Yeah, I really, as readers will see in the magazine and online when the story comes out, I really like the sidebar showing, like, I think there's about 7 or 8 different organizations that are here to help. And, like you said, some of them, they may not have been around, for the previous generations, but they're here now and they're here to help, all generational, veterans. So I thought that was really cool to see that there's different ones. Another question I had, what were some, was there anything during your researching, your reporting, or just like writing this article that you learned? You had mentioned that already, but was there anything that might have surprised you or just something that was really like a takeaway for you?
I hadn't thought about that much. Even though I mentioned my father early on, and I've known some veterans. I just didn't realize how tough it is for some of them to find jobs. I didn't think this made the article, but I did some research. There were some studies that I came across that said veterans actually have a lower unemployment rate than the general population, uh, but they are far more likely to have a civilian job that does not pay them for their experience, doesn't utilize their skills. If they had a civilian job and they had 4 years of experience, 10 years of experience in something, they would hopefully get paid for that. But if they're transitioning, it's much harder for them to find a job that they'll pay them for that experience. And that's just partly, it's an education process on both sides. I think it's educating the veterans how to talk about what they do and how it transfers, and educating, again, the recruiters, human resources people, how these skills really do transfer and how you can use them at these companies.
But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the kind of related to what you're saying, one of the stats in your article, you said every year about 200,000 US service members leave the military and then going back into that fear of, not being able to find a job that matches their skills. And then a little bit later on, you said that the US could have, more than 3 million open manufacturing jobs by 2033. And almost half of those can go unfilled. So it's really crucial, as you outline your story, to really tap into, the military veterans and what they can do to, be a solution for this workforce shortage.
Yeah. It's the problem is that it really puts it in numbers. I mean, I know we talked about it before, and it's something we're always writing about, reporting on, but it's a real thing. And you think about all those veterans coming out every year, and that really could fill a lot of that need. But it's just a question of making those matches, which takes some effort, because I didn't know about as many of these organizations that we talked about here that help veterans, and I knew even less of the organizations that were human resources that were helping from that side. But they need to get together, because clearly there's an opportunity here.
Yeah, is there anything else, from this story that you reported on, your research, or anything that you might not have even put in the story that you'd like to share with our audience?
There was one guy I talked to, and I think it's in the article. But he ended up being hired by one of the companies that I think it was for Cincinnati Incorporated. They hired him as a recruiter because his personality was just perfect for recruitment, and he didn't know that's not what he applied for. And when he applied, I think at Cincinnati, he was going to do some kind of a manufacturing job, like building the equipment they sell, the machinery, and servicing that. But they liked his personality so much that he became a recruiter, or they put him in that position, and he said, "I'll give it a try," and he loves it. They love him in that position, and there you go. So you just never know where your skills are gonna transfer.
Thank you, Mike, so much for, talking about this imperative topic about, veterans and really utilizing their skill set, helping them to, have a comfortable transition from, service to the workforce. So I really appreciate your time today.
Well, thank you, Rachel. It's always great to talk to you, and hopefully give our readers and our website visitors a little insight to the process of how we put these articles together.
Yeah, absolutely. For our audience, you can definitely look forward to this story appearing on advancedmanufacturing.org, and it will appear in the February issue of Manufacturing, Engineering, and Technology. And to keep up with the latest manufacturing trends and hear more of our podcasts, definitely keep up with our newsletter. You can find our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, and of course, visit us at advancedmanufacturing.org. Take care, everyone. Thank you.